What time is it? Good morning, everybody, and welcome once again to the Arab Media Forum. My name is Hadley Gamble, and I am Al Arabia's chief international anchor and the host of the soon-to-be forthcoming Hadley Gamble Show. I am thrilled to be speaking to the gentleman sitting beside me, and I'm going to read his titles just so that I make sure and get them correct. Ronnie Roth, CEO of International Media Investments, based in Abu Dhabi, as well as president and operating partner at Redbird IMI, based in New York. Okay, Ronnie, you and I have known each other for quite a while. And I think there's no better person to talk to the fundamental changes that we are seeing in the media space, not just here in the Middle East, but globally. You spent a quarter of a century at CNN. Is linear over?
Hi, can you hear me? There we go, yeah. Thanks, Hadley, and hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Is linear over? Straight for the jugular on that one. A lot of TV stations around here, including the ones that we operate. Look, I don't think linear is over, per se. I think if you think about it, TV consumption is just changing, media consumption is changing. And I think the delivery mechanism is going to continuously evolve, and with the advent of AI and with the proliferation of social media as a platform of choice for the younger generations, you'll continue to have an audiovisual experience. How you feed the pipes is what's probably changing, right? So if I think about my kids, they watch TV, but it's IPTV, right? Like they'll watch Netflix on TV, they'll watch Disney Plus on TV, and they don't know the difference of live TV versus on-demand TV. I think so. Where it becomes important for people like us in the news space in specific is when you're dealing with live events. I think live events and breaking news, from what we've seen so far, continues to be something that drives people to a big linear sort of platform or technology of sorts, right? Like I think, despite the fact that you can go to Twitter and other social media feeds and get like timely updates, what you don't get is people giving you context. And that's where news in specific and journalism will continue to play a very different role, despite AI and despite technology taking over and transforming the sector as a whole and sectors as a whole, not just media. So I think, linear, regular programming of general entertainment channels, probably a thing of the past as generations grow up. And I'm seeing that again in my own children. But for news, I think you'll always need that journalist to come and give it context and to give it some perspective. And where it counts the most is when there's live breaking news, as we're seeing in the past few months in the region and beyond, really. So not a straight answer, but I think, ultimately content will remain to be king, and how you distribute that content is what's going to change over time and what's changed over time.
And also it's about advertising, and I know those of us in journalism struggle on a daily basis to get the news out there while at the same time conforming to the budgets that we're given. And all of that obviously has to do so often with advertising dollars, and that's about getting eyes on the product. When you look at what's happening, for example, with CNN right now in the United States, I think that they had the worst ratings in prime time last week since 1990s, I think. And then also I heard something a couple of months ago that they were rating lower than the History Channel. First of all, is that disappointing to you? And second of all, is it a surprise?
Look, I spent 25 years at CNN. I spent most of my career there, and it afforded me a lot of great experiences, not least of all having met my wife over there, which was like the biggest prize. But what I would say is, I wouldn't discount CNN. I think what they're dealing with is, and I don't want to spend this panel talking about CNN because I think there's other things to talk about. But since you asked, I think what CNN is dealing with is just a situation whereby the sector, as it is going through a drastic transformation. And I think what they need to do is really triangulate or create a better perspective on how to serve a new audience of news consumers. And CNN is a very, very powerful news brand globally. And ultimately, I think if they find a way to make that transition to talk to a broader demographic rather than the sort of 54 plus, 55 plus, which is what their sweet spot and Fox News' sweet spots are, it'll be here for a long, long time. And, as you know, the partnership that we have at Redbird IMI is with the former CEO of CNN, Jeff Zucker. And when him and I decided to launch Redbird IMI with the partners here in Abu Dhabi and with Jerry Cardinal in New York, One of the areas that we wanted to focus on was news because we felt that ultimately, as we go through this transition, the people who embrace technology and the people who embrace change and the people who accept the fact that, whether it's a linear discussion or whether it's, about ratings or otherwise, ultimately, as long as you are creating content that people like, that super serves a consumer, that is very specific to who it targets and how it targets them, creates a relationship with them, offers them something unique, offers them something they can't get elsewhere, ultimately you'll win the day. So I think if they can figure that out in the way that we're trying to at IMI, ultimately, they'll be around for a long, long time. And just on advertising, I think it's worth picking up on that for a second. I think advertising, again, is going to go through a major transformation. I think people today have a very sort of legacy linear view on advertising because it's what we've grown up with as this generation. I mean, maybe I'm older than most, but for people of my generation, that's what we know. I think if you think about the future and you suspend disbelief a little bit and think about, what does advertising for our children look like 20 years from now? And it won't be a pre-roll, it won't be a pop-up, it won't be a banner, it won't be a 30-second TVC. It will be embedded product placement deep in the heart of content that they are completely connected to. And without knowing it, they will see that Coke, they will see that Pepsi, they will see that Mercedes car driven by their superhero or by their super villain or whatever it is, and that will make an emotional connection. And that, for me, from a commercial point of view, is far better monetizable, far more monetizable and far more attractive to a big client than what we do today. So I think, we all talk about how technology is going to change media. We don't really talk about how it changes the commercialization of advertising and how you serve ads and how you serve brands. And I think that's very exciting for me when I think about it.
You're wearing two hats today. Walk us through the difference between your separate roles and then also what that strategy looks like.
Sure. So I think, look, if I talk about IMI, ultimately our objective there is to run the operating assets and deliver best-in-class products that lead the market in news, knowledge, and factual entertainment to enrich people's lives. I don't know if some of you have caught the general manager for Sky News talking about it earlier. We are very focused on making sure that we deliver news with a slightly different tone. I think today the world is filled with polarizing news platforms that give you a lot of what you want to hear, but don't necessarily educate you about what you need to know. And we are on a mission at IMI to make sure that everything we do across Sky News, across the National, Al Ain, CNN Business Arabic, is first and foremost providing an enriching experience to our consumers. So we're very clear on what we do at IMI. If I pivot over to Redbird IMI, and Redbird IMI is very exciting in that I feel like it's the first time a Middle Eastern company is playing on the big global stage, acquiring media assets in a meaningful way. And our objective there is very simple. We are looking at major global media assets of scale that deliver strong economic returns. And given that it's a private equity platform, we are looking for businesses that we can go into. And contrary to popular belief, as is done in most private equity situations, we will invest rather than strip down, and we will then sell them or hold them for a longer period of time. One of the things that we have as an advantage with Redbird IMI that we bring to the table that I think is different to most other private equity firms is that it's probably three things. I would say capital, patience, and operating experience. A lot of the other firms can arguably say they have some of the first, a little bit of the second, and a mix of the third. We have a perfect combination of all three. We have a deep source of capital backing us. We're quite patient because we're taking a very long-term view on what we do. We're not in a hurry. And the operating experience that Jeff and myself and other people that we brought in from other media companies that we've worked with and colleagues in the past that bring to the table means that we don't just buy these companies, sit, wait till someone strips them down for us and then sell them for a profit. We bring them in, we double down on them, we pump them with resource, we invest in them deliberately, thoughtfully, using our operating experience, and then we either hold them or we sell them at a premium. And both scenarios work for the companies and for us as a business.
The Telegraph. What happened?
Have some water. The Telegraph. Look, I think in an ideal world, I would be sitting here in front of you all saying that we own the Telegraph. And not only would that be good for us, it's part of the portfolio, it would be good for the people of the Telegraph. And what my fear is what's happened with the Telegraph ultimately is probably something that will cost the Telegraph and its employees more and the UK government more than any of us over here. It is not my place to comment on UK politics, especially during an election year. But what I can tell you about the Telegraph is that regulators make the rules, lawmakers make the rules. And when we closed the Telegraph deal, the rules were changed after the fact. And that, for me, suggests that the UK becomes very difficult to promote inward investment. Just as a data point, last year alone, the UK lost 1,200 journalists in 1 year. 1,200 journalists. So really, I think ultimately, for whatever reason, whether it's xenophobia, whether it's party politics in the UK, whatever it was, I think ultimately it's a shame that it played out the way it did. We have moved on from that. And like I said, I think ultimately the Telegraph will be a weaker brand because of that. We are now focused on selling the Telegraph and the Spectator. We will sell it at a premium. We will make our money back and then some and move on to other markets and focus on other opportunities. But we have drawn a line in the sand on that one.
No regrets?
I think the only regret I will say we have is that maybe, and I'm being quite honest about it. If I said no, it would sound a little bit cocky, but I think in hindsight, I would say maybe the timing could have been better crafted. But you don't know what you don't know about these things. We didn't know that the UK government and the sitting government was going to be as weak as it was. We didn't know that an election was going to be called. We didn't know that there was going to be in-party fighting around this issue. So I think there was a lot of things that we've learned from this, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and we're moving on from this one.
What looks attractive to you at this point in terms of external assets?
Look, from a Redbird IMI perspective, if I think about what we've acquired so far, if I think about All3Media, and I think about Front Office Sports and some of the other acquisitions we've made, what is true across all of them, and it takes me back to what I talked about with regards to IMI and how we run our operations there, they all super serve an audience, right? So we're very careful about recognizing the fact that today's consumers are very discerning, and if you don't super serve them, if you don't give them something of quality that is very specific to what they like, you're probably just going to end up swimming in an ocean of content. And with AI, that's even worse today, because even machines are creating content, let alone people creating the content. So for us, what we try to look for is very special IP. So if you take All3 as an example, All3 is a company that owns 50 smaller companies that all specialize in a specific genre. Front Office Sports is a very specific platform that focuses on the business of sports. So what we're looking for are unique IP and unique companies that are able to offer a very specialized individual experience to a consumer that speaks in their tone of voice, connects with them in a meaningful way, and creates engagement and relevance. So I think, I don't want to give away sort of specific names, obviously, but I think we continue to be interested in
Tell us.
You'll go buy the stock. Look, touche. The news space continues to interest us because we feel that that's going to continue to be underserved in its current format. I think there's a lot of legacy news brands that operate in a very formulaic way, and I think between Jeff and I, we probably can bring something different to the table. I think the production space is very attractive. And look, if I take a step back, zoom out a little bit, we're looking at making, big bets. As I thought about it this morning and I was going through my mind where we are in terms of Redbird's deployment, we set out to invest about $1 billion in a span of 2 to 3 years. We're already at 1.2 in about a year, not counting the Telegraph. And if you include the Telegraph, that's just under $2 billion and counting. So our principals are very committed to this venture, and me and my partners are very keen on making sure that we acquire big brands in big scaled markets. So I would watch this space. I think we have some exciting things on the horizon.
In your mind, how damaging has the media coverage been to public perception, not just since the start of the UK and Russia conflict, but what's happening in Gaza today? Because most of the conversation that I have with other journalists is the disappointment in traditional media brands and how they've covered it?
Yeah, look, it's a good question, Hadi. I mean, and again, Nadeem touched on this earlier. This is a really sensitive issue. And, I want to sort of carefully maneuver through this answer because it's a very emotional time in the region, and understandably so. But I think that news brands are underserving the consumer. I think they are doing a disservice to the consumer because they are very much picking a lane. We are very much in a time and place whereby...
And to the profession.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are being forced as consumers to pick a lane on a story or stories that have multiple facets, like multiple dynamics. And to do that is insulting to the people in Gaza and in Russia and in the Ukraine. It's insulting to the profession, as you very well said. And I think it really creates it gets you to sort of the lowest common denominator. And what we need to do, and what we're very focused on doing at IMI in specific, and on with the assets that we acquire with Redbird IMI, is to elevate the conversation. I hate to use the word agenda because agenda in and itself has negative connotations. So, for lack of a better word, if we do have a vision for our operating assets at IMI, it's to be progressive in what we report on, to be progressive in our message. And that's hard to sell because right now the emotions are so raw and people are suffering and kids are dying. And I'm from this region. I mean, I'm Lebanese. I grew up in and around the region before going to the US and the UK and coming back here. So it's personal to me as well. But ultimately, if we don't offer our consumers a more holistic view of the situation that we're reporting on, while also reminding them of the opportunity, of the hope, of the potential prosperity and peace and harmony that could exist if we just approach these issues in a slightly different way, we will end up just being very, very divided. And I think news networks are guilty as charged of driving that emotion. And I think everyone owes the consumer and the profession more.
To pick up on that point specifically, and you and I have discussed this before, obviously we've had two major conflicts globally. We're coming into what will no doubt be a very divisive presidential election. The campaign's already underway. How worrying is it to you, both as a consumer and as someone who actually is dictating what we see in the media space today, that A, it's so polarized, and B, the decisions made in the next few months by voters in the United States could have serious ramifications, not just for the U.S., but obviously for those global contexts and for the world?
Look, let me bring it back home for a second, because I think the U.S. election is no doubt going to be one of the most interesting elections in our lifetimes, by far. Two very difficult choices, love them or hate them. Both of them bring different things to the table, and both of them bring a lot of issues with them to the table, right? What gives me comfort is, let me make it even more personal. My son was telling me this morning as he was going to school that he was walking the hallway of his school here, and he was reflecting on the first Emirati astronaut. And, I grew up with Neil Armstrong on the wall, and Winston Churchill, and, FDR. And the people that are growing up in this region today are growing up with very different role models, and are growing up focusing and aspiring and wishing and hoping to be part of this ecosystem and part of this community. It is no longer the case whereby everything's being exported and everyone's looking to be in America, and what's America going to do next, and what's Trump going to do for me, and what's Biden going to do for me. What the UAE and what the Saudis and what the Qataris and what the Bahrainis and the rest of the world are doing for their people, I would say mainly this region in specific, is really comforting. And again, as Nadeem said in his speech, I'm not here to do an ad for the UAE government, but there's a reason why I'm back here. I lived in New York, I lived in London, short stint in Turkey, and while I left the Middle East never really left me. And as I come back here, sort of 35 years later, I look around and I think to myself, where do I want to be? Do I want to be in a country where I'm worried about having Trump or Biden as my president, or do I want to be here where my kids aspire to be an Arab astronaut and I've got peace, prosperity, safety, growth and events like these where we can get together and have these open conversations and learn from each other. I choose to be here.
Yeah, and continuity of government is not bad as an investor.
That always helps.
In the outlook. Final question, and we are out of time, but I have to ask you, plans for the region, specifically in terms of investments. What's attractive to you?
Look, so let me, we're out of time, but let me kind of give you a very quick answer. With Redbird IMI, in every conversation, if not most of them, with the assets that we've acquired, out of the top 5 things we're talking about is there opportunities for growth in the Middle East. By far. I mean, whether it's all 3, front office, I'm having conversations with all of them. Juggling the 2 worlds is proving to be really difficult. So I will start with saying that with the acquisitions that we've made between all 3, front office, Everwonder, MediaRes, we will be looking to expand those operations within the region. And then as this region continues to grow and as investments continue to be made here and content continues to become more and more compelling, which is what I think is a huge opportunity for us, I can see us making organic acquisitions of companies within the region as well. So I think net we'll grow our international assets here, and in time we'll be looking at making our own acquisitions within the region as well.
Because it's inevitable that this region creates more content
Absolutely.
for itself.
And it should. It's on us. It's long overdue. And I think this is our moment for doubling down and making sure that we're building something that competes on the global stage. We've got the resource, we've got the capital, we've got the know-how, we've got the government support, we've got the creativity, and a big youth population. So this is our moment.
Fantastic. Ronnie Rod, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.